Hi, everyone. It's just after 4 o'clock in New York. We were listening to a remarkable speech there by President Joe Biden from the White House, capping off the United We Stand summit. It's a day-long event. It's designed to address hate-fueled violence in America right now. The importance of this message, quite clear, but so is the messenger. You'll recall, in the course of officially launching his successful candidacy for the presidency back in April of 2019, the first two words he uttered were Charlottesville, Virginia. It was in the context of the violence there and the resulting imperative, in his view, to restore the soul of our nation. How appropriate and powerful, then, that today President Joe Biden was introduced by Susan Bro. She, of course, is the mother of Heather Heyer, the young woman who was murdered just for counter-protesting the white supremacists in Charlottesville. We are all painfully aware of what happened next. Charlottesville was, sadly, just the beginning. In the years since, there have been more attacks, there is more hate, more innocent people have been killed. Incidents of hate-fueled violence feel relentless in America. Recall what happened in Buffalo back in May. 10 people who were just grocery shopping on a Saturday were murdered in cold blood by a gunman simply because they were black. The victims of that disgusting racist massacre weren't even buried yet. They hadn't been put to rest before the nation's focus abruptly shifted to the tragedy in Uvalde, Texas, because 2 weeks later, another tragic massacre. 19 students, 2 teachers were dead. Their only crime was going to school, going to work, which brings us back to where we started. President Joe Biden today calling for a whole-of-society response to hate-fueled violence. The plan includes a host of new policies and actions on the part of the federal government, local leaders, and tech companies. It's where we begin our coverage today. NBC News White House correspondent Mike Memoli will join us live from the White House as soon as he can make it from the president's speech out to the North Lawn, where the cameras are. Jason Johnson is already here, though, politics and journalism professor at Morgan State University, also an MSNBC contributor. And our friend, the Democratic strategist, Aisha Mills, is back. Jason Johnson, Susan Bro saying that the president was following through on a promise. It was a campaign promise, but this certainly is an interesting bookend to that animating principle behind his candidacy today.
Yes, I mean, this is something that Joe Biden has believed in, and if you believe the story, which I do, that he said is like, I had no intention of running for president. He was the retired war hero out in the mountain chopping wood, and Charlottesville brought him back into the fight that he never thought he'd have to fight again. And I found that to be charming and engaging. And I've always thought that Joe Biden is a good moral leader when it comes to these issues. What I found missing from this speech is usually what I find missing from speeches like this. There were no teeth to it. And there was not enough specificity. And what do I mean by that? Well, look, hate-filled violence. Most acts of violence are filled with hate. A sexual assault is an act of hate. You know, shooting people in a grocery store is an act of hate. But you know what's also an act of hate? Defunding a whole city in Jackson, Mississippi until the people can't drink water. You know what's also an act of hate? Routinely underfunding schools that are filled with black and brown children. We need to be specific about what kind of hate we're talking about. And this is taking place at a time where you have governors in Florida and Texas who are, I'm not a legal analyst, so I can't say kidnapping, but are taking undocumented people and shifting them around the country as a political stunt. Those are also actions of hate. So I'd like to hear more from President Biden. I know his heart's in the right place, but where's the policy? Where's the DOJ going to go to active actions of policy hate in addition to vigilante violence that he was talking about?
Aisha, one of the things he did speak of more specifically was gun safety legislation, what has been accomplished and what he views as a big to-do list, the assault weapons ban on his list. What did you think of the speech?
Well, I thought the speech was inspiring. I'm glad to see that he continues to talk about doing something about violence. And, you know, it's important that he tout all the things and the successes around gun violence and otherwise going into the midterms. I think that this speech is an opportunity to shift the conversation nationally to be one that is positive as we move into the midterms. You know, as he was talking, I Googled dignity.us that was mentioned. That's this new listening tour, essentially, around the country, to try to bring communities together. I like that he is centering my friend Michael Smith, who is the CEO of AmeriCorps, was there at the White House today talking about this, but he's centering national service and conversations within communities and getting community leaders to actually build bridges across difference. I think that all those are meaningful and important and inspiring and give us a sense of hope. Remember that hope and change refrain?
Yeah.
I think that there's a hearkening back to the Obama era of people feeling powerful in their lives that the Biden administration is trying to bring us back into as we move into the midterms, which are expected to be quite divisive. So, you know, I agree with Jason that there's a lot of devil in the details of actual policy measures that need to be moved, right? Period, full stop. I do think we benefit as a nation from having a tone and tenor and being able to have broader conversations that are hopeful. And so I'm looking forward to seeing how that listening tour plays out and what the PR, frankly, looks like going into the midterms around all this.
Jason, just try to meet your challenge of, you know, where's the substance? Washington Post reports that there's been a surge of federal hate crimes prosecutions this year under Garland. In the first 6 months of 2022, the Justice Department filed 20 cases, a pace that would eclipse any single year of the Obama or Trump administrations. I take your point that it's cranking up too slowly in proportion of what's going on in this country, but it would seem there's enough to build on here now.
Well, yeah, look, there's always something to build on. And the DOJ, especially with some of the deputies that Garland's had, they have gotten better at prosecuting certain kinds of hate crimes. That's progress. We also have a president who says, I want to fund the police, at the same time that we're finding evidence after evidence and study after study after study that large police forces and even parts of our armed forces have been filled with white nationalists, that the attitudes and beliefs of many of these people that he wants to fund and put more of them in the street are the antithesis of the message that he's talking about. We also have a year ago where the president went to Tulsa and he talked about the terrible tragedy that happened 100 years ago. We still have 2 or 3 people alive from that attack. They haven't received reparations. The concern that I always have about this stuff, Nicole, is it's not a lack of faith in the heart and the belief of the people speaking it. I don't think Joe Biden wants America to be torn apart by racism. I don't even think some Republicans feel that way. And that's a rare thing for me to say. I don't think all Republicans feel that way. But are they willing to do the difficult work? Prosecuting somebody after they've committed a crime is closing the barn door after it's already stomped through your rice fields, right? What we need to be doing is tearing this stuff out at the roots. And that comes in the police departments, that comes in policy, and that comes in preventing people who have evil in their heart from getting the levers of power to attack those that they don't believe in and don't think should be a part of America. That's what I need to hear. And that's the long-standing change that'll make people who are concerned like me believe that maybe our future is going to be brighter.
He did use the device of a bright light as an antiseptic. Let me show you what he had to say about the oxygen given to hate on the right of our media ecosystem. Let me show that to you, Aisha.
You know, hate can be defeated, but only hides. And when given any oxygen, it comes out from under the rocks. In the last few years, it's been given much too much oxygen in our politics, in our media, and on the internet. Too much hate, all for power and profit. That's the part where that's changed a little bit. It's about power and profit.
As he said that, I was thinking about the hatred directed toward Asian Americans by the ex-president during the COVID-19 pandemic. I was thinking about the deeply personal attacks against Vice President Kamala Harris. I was thinking about the ageism directed at President Joe Biden. I was thinking about the physical confrontations that the few Republicans who have sought to hold Donald Trump accountable have faced. There is an epidemic and a toxicity in our politics that doesn't go away if we ignore it, Aisha.
You know, Nicole, you're right. And I was also thinking about the profiteering around the coverage of all those things. and the sensationalism of them. And so it was curious to me that the technology firms were brought up as policing themselves or somehow putting forth some new initiatives to deal with the disinformation, the misinformation, the perpetuation of all of the nasty that you just talked about that ends up going viral on these platforms, bringing all kind of eyeballs to them and keeping them at the top of the national discourse. And so, you know, for me, I saw the Color of Change put forth a new plan this week to deal with the tech companies and hold them accountable for the way that their platforms are really how so much of this hate is being organized and then proliferated throughout society. And so I am curious how they are going to be trusted to police themselves, which sounds like a piece of this, and think that we need to have some real talk about the fact that, you know, yes, all of those things exist in society. They existed long before Donald Trump. The difference is that there are more cameras and that there are more microphones in front of it. And what are we going to do about that? And I say we for all of us, you know, who continue to kind of watch it as the train wreck goes by. That's a big question. And that's why I bring up this idea of what's the PR going to look like? Because this dignity.us or whatever the conversations are that this administration is trying to seed will be interesting to follow. Will we follow them?